I Barely Got Here is a collection of stories and conversations based on 24 years in law enforcement. You have the right to be disturbed by some of the content or disagree with the viewpoints. Anything you hear can and will be dosed with sarcasm and dark humor. You have the right to know that discussions will often be graphic with language and themes that are intended for a mature audience. Do you understand your rights? Then buckle up, Buttercup. We're going 10-8. Welcome back to I Barely Got Here. I'm your host, Kevin Booncher. Tonight's episode, Hide and Seek. You know, one of the fundamental aspects of law enforcement involves the capture of suspects who don't want to be caught. So, part of that evading the cops is hiding from the cops. Now, cops hide from suspects also, but I'll probably address that in another episode down the road. So, police find plenty of people hiding in kind of the usual places: attics, car trunks, closets, a kitchen cabinet, and so on. Sometimes these people come out peacefully, and sometimes they come out determined to cause us harm or try to kill us. Which is why you have to be so careful in these circumstances, because you just never know who's got a gun or a knife or a screwdriver or whatever else that you can't see, and is just waiting to hurt us when we're at our most vulnerable. There's often questions about the use of a police canine where the dog is sent into situations with a suspect that's hiding and or is refusing to leave that hiding spot. A dog, while we sometimes, probably oftentimes, like them more than we do some people in our lives, that dog is still a tool for law enforcement. They will always be used, when reasonable, to prevent putting an officer's life in danger. And notice I said, when reasonable. If circumstances indicate that putting a dog into that problem is almost surely going to end with the dog getting injured or worse, killed, then other options have to be considered. Along the same lines, when a canine's put into a hiding place where a suspect won't come out, yeah, that suspect's going to get bit, probably a lot, if they don't comply. But in those circumstances, that suspect had refused to come out, and there's almost always some indication that they may be armed with some kind of a weapon. The bottom line, and I sound like a broken record here, but comply with the police and you're not going to get hurt. There's a few times I can remember pulling on a leg or an arm or just a shoe because that was the only thing that you could get a hold of to try to extricate a person from that hiding spot. Kind of reminds me of trying to pull my tortoise out of their favorite hiding hole. A couple legs they pull in tight and the other two are dug in, and they do their best to stay in there and keep you from pulling them out. And like other things, any cop that's been on the job for a length of time, they're going to have some pretty good stories about hidden suspects and how they dealt with them. And I'm sure after this one airs, I'll probably get a text or two from some of the fellas that, hey, you know, what about this one or what about that one? But for this episode, I'll just tell a few of my more memorable hiding incidents. I was working as a patrol officer and had been sent to a burglary alarm call with another cop. Now, for the police, over 90% of these alarms, probably more, but over 90% of these alarms are false, and they could get pretty tedious and kind of lull you into a state of complacency. You've done this hundreds of times, and it's just another false alarm. We'd preach against this constantly as supervisors and to yourself, but you still catch yourself doing it anyway. So me and another officer get to this business, and the alarm's blaring outside and inside, makes it really hard to talk and really hurts your ears. And we do end up finding an unlocked door. Well, it doesn't mean that it's valid. You know, often an alarm is a result of an RO or the responsible person for the business just forgetting to lock up a door properly, but finding the unlocked door does raise the stakes a bit. So we advise the open door over the radio, and we begin our search from the unlocked front door into the business. Now, depending on the circumstances, you could ask to close the channel, so the channel would be available for any of your radio traffic in case you need to transmit something during the search. Because otherwise, you can have an officer, in some cases, that's fighting for their life, trying to get that little blurb of transmission out on the radio. But the problem is you'll have a long-winded officer babbling on and on about some stupid civil situation he's dealing with. Well, for this situation, given the size of the problem, we went ahead and closed that channel. So we're searching the interior, got our guns drawn, we've got our flashlights out, doing just as we're trained, just as we've done, hundreds of times. And as you search, you're looking high, you're looking low, you're looking underneath things, you're looking inside of things, on top of things, you're opening doors, you're looking through, the windows for the office, just everything you can do to possibly find that person. We train and we operate that you would look anywhere that a very small person could hide. And you also do your best to never have to turn your back on an uncleared area or uncleared territory. I'm doing my thing, being cautious, watching the other cover officer, and he's doing the right thing. And I come to a door that appears like it could be, a closet or a very small room based on just the configuration of everything around me. And closed doors are always tricky. You never know what may be behind it. And if someone really wants to ambush you via, a physical assault or shoot you, that's the place to do it. So you're always really cautious with closed doors. And if it's locked, then you got to make the decision as to what you're going to do based on the incident up to that point, whether or not you're going to try to force entry, post somebody on it the whole time, or if you're going to bypass it. Well, you can open a door fast, you can open a door slow, all the way, part way. It just depends on the layout and kind of how you feel and 10 other circumstances that you've got going on. Then it can depend on if it's a right hinge, left hinge, inward opening, outward opening. Does it have an auto close? Is it heavy? Is it light? Just a lot of stuff to consider. Well, I get ready to open this particular door. The flashlight's under one arm, gun in the other hand. I get ready to open this door. I've got flashlight under one arm, gun in one hand, and my left hand is turning the knob. So I decide that if the knob turns, I'm going to pull the door open quick, and I give it a slow turn to see if it will turn at all. Well, it does. So I turn it the rest of the way and yank it open. Well, as soon as it clears about 2/3 of the way open, a person comes at me. Like he'd been at the door just waiting to attack me, kind of like that worst case scenario. So as I'm sucking all the air out of the room, I'm stepping back and I'm trying to create distance to give me that half second to decide, what am I going to do? How am I going to react? Do I shoot him? Do I holster and go hands on? Does he have anything in his hands? All these things are things that you have to consider in an instant during an incident like this. This is a great example of one of those police situations where it's so easy to critique after the fact, you should have done this or you shouldn't have done that. You put the critics in the same situation and watch what happens, because we have, and they typically fail miserably. Anyway, as I'm trying to say anything to this guy so that I at least have record of some sort of verbal command before I possibly shoot the guy, something's just not quite right. And in that fraction of a second, I realized that this guy wasn't moving right. He was really stiff and he wasn't jumping at me. He was falling out. Well, he wasn't a he was a fully dressed mannequin. The way it was set up, with clothes and hair and a face, I'm sure it had been leaned against that door for some unexpected employee of the business to find, but I happened to find it first. So after about 10 seconds or so, my heart started beating normally again and came back down out of my throat, and I laughed at myself. It was pretty funny. I could only picture the person setting this up for some unsuspecting friend there at the business, just like my friends and I have done to each other a number of times. And I'm sure there are a few curse words that I let loose, but to be honest, I think that 200% adrenaline dump deleted that memory. It was one of the many times during a career that you would have paid money to have that on video. Well, we finished that building search. Nothing was wrong. And I told the other officer what had happened, and we got a good laugh out of it. We cleared the call, and I always remember that as the time that I damn near shot that attack mannequin. I was a sergeant in SIB, and one of my guys, Timmy, was on the tail of a guy that was wanted for a couple of felony arrest warrants. Now, there's a number of ways that a detective can work toward catching a suspect, and for this guy, Tim had been working on the mother of the suspect's girlfriend. Well, Mom didn't like her daughter dating this felon, so she'd been cooperating with us to try to arrange his apprehension. This day, Timmy gets a call from Mom, who tells him, hey, the suspect's at my apartment right now. Well, we knew he'd been staying there kind of off and on with the daughter/girlfriend, and Mom wasn't happy about it at all. Well, we already had Mom's address, and it was in an adjacent city, not far from where the office was at the time. Tim checks around for some help and is able to round up me and another guy from another squad to run over there and check into it real quick. We get there and park and start kind of working the angles to make sure that we keep this guy contained if he is actually in there. The apartment's on the ground floor and has apartments on each side of it. So we get the one guy to go around the back to watch that back side just to make sure that he doesn't bail out of a window or back porch door. And then Tim and I go to the front door. We make contact with Mom, who kind of waves us in and just basically points to a back bedroom. So we search the apartment as we're making our way back to that bedroom. Like I said, you never want to pass areas. And we want to make sure that we don't pass him hiding behind us. Because you never know. Sometimes people have a change of heart and, did she let him hide closer to the door so that when we got there and went into the bedroom, he could squirt out? Who knows? It's happened before. Well, we find nothing as we work back to that bedroom. So in there we go, expecting to find our guy, hook him up, and wrap this up. Well, we look in the obvious, the closet, behind a desk, under some clothes, coming up with nothing. Well, there's not really that much in the room to begin with. There's a bed, flat on the floor, no frame, a desk, as I said, and a few other items. And since the bed is literally flat on the floor, it's not like he's hiding underneath that. So I give the mattress kind of a casual lift to look under there. Don't see anything odd about that. So Tim and I are kind of looking at each other like, what the hell? Where is this guy? And we're not talking much because, when you're searching for someone like that, you just never know where they're at, and you don't want them to hear what you may be saying at all anyway. So we both walk back out into the main area of the apartment where the mom is standing there, kind of expecting us to be hauling her daughter's boyfriend away and out of her life. And when she sees that we're empty-handed, she looks at us and kind of gives a shoulder shrug like, well, where is he? And we kind of shoulder shrug back, and Tim asks her, hey, can you step outside so I can talk to you for a minute? And, obviously so he can get her out of earshot of this guy if he's, some invisible spot in the apartment. Well, while Tim does that, I jump on the radio and I double check with the guy in the back and say, hey, I'm just making sure you're there. Did you see anything? Are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And comes back. Nope, nothing to report. Been here since, I came back. Haven't seen a thing. No movement. No nothing. All right. So while Tim's talking to the mom, I'm standing inside the apartment and I'm just trying to stay quiet. And you kind of can do that because sometimes you'll hear a noise or something from that invisible suspect to figure out where he may be, but I'm getting nothing. Well, Tim comes back in and mouths, he's still in here. She's positive. All right. So we go back over the apartment, starting from the front door and working in again, checking all the same places, but, checking even smaller places if they existed. And eventually we get into that bedroom again. So we're back in the bedroom. We're standing there, we're kind of looking at each other, we're thinking, looking around, and then almost at the same time, we looked at the box spring and then back at each other, and then we smiled. It's got to be. There's just no other place inside that apartment that a body could fit that we hadn't physically checked. I mean, the box spring can't be more than 8 or 10 inches thick, but again, it's the only place left. And I had lifted the mattress, but I didn't see any lump or bulge or anything like that. And, the mattress lifted and had the right weight to it. So I'm wondering, well, how in the world could someone hide inside a box spring with, the springs and the wood slats and, everything that's in there and the covering. But again, there just was nowhere else left to go. So I'm closer to the bed, laying on the floor, and I reach down and I kind of give that mattress a lift again off the corner, and it lifts with about the same effort that it did before. And then this time I kind of work my fingers underneath the corner of the box spring where it's sitting on the floor, and I give it a bit of a lift. Well, this time there's kind of there's a weighty resistance once I get it maybe, 1 or 2 inches off the floor. So bingo. Well, Tim's watching and he sees what's going on. So he draws his pistol about the same time I'm standing and kind of backing up a bit. We have a quick nonverbal communication between us that, he'll be lethal cover if the guy comes out shooting or with a knife or screwdriver or whatever else that could hurt us. And then I'll be hands-on, or that means I'll deal with him if he's physically resisting or fighting, or he needs to be, given some help getting out of that box spring. So we both set up in a position that will allow us to do what our job is with the guy. And then we kind of both nod to each other like, let's go. So I say, get out of the box spring. We know you're in there. Making sure that, it conveys that we know you're in there. Then I say, make sure you come out slowly, nothing in your hands so you don't get yourself shot. There's a short pause, and then we hear some movement from underneath that mattress. And then slowly, this is the funniest part, this hand just kind of starts to slowly extend from in between the mattress and the box spring. And the mattress lifts up a little bit at the same time as this guy kind of starts crawling his way out from somewhere. Again, I don't know how he got in there. I still don't see how he even fit. And I'm stifling a laugh, and Tim's kind of doing the same as we watch this guy slowly extricate himself out from inside that box spring through what we later saw was this kind of a small hole that was in the fabric on the top middle portion of the box spring underneath the mattress. Well, once he's out all the way, I can kind of see how he fit in there. He's a little dude. I mean, he's like a kid sized, but he's cooperative and he knows he's had, so he complies and he's pretty quick. He's in handcuffs. And as with most arrests, especially an odd one like this, we ask him, what were you doing? What were you thinking? What'd you hear? Whatever we can get out of him. He says he knew that he could hide inside that box spring. So when he heard something at the door and quickly figured out that it was the cops, he jumped in there and just kind of waited. And he said he had done that before with cops coming to try to find him for other stuff. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? So he listened as we searched, and he could hear portions of our conversation about where in the heck was the guy. And he said, I figured I had nothing to lose by hiding, so I just stayed there and hoped for the best. Yeah, can't blame him for that, because obviously no one wants to go to jail. Well, we told him we were glad he didn't try to do anything stupid or, resist or anything, but, he just kind of shrugged and said that was only going to make things worse for him. So at least he was smart that way. Mom was happy when she finally saw us bringing this guy out and took him away, but I can imagine that the girlfriend wasn't so happy when she found out. I was working as a patrol officer a short time after I'd returned from my work in Bosnia. It was a late night in the winter and it was pretty cold. There was a vehicle pursuit involving a stolen car where the officers lost the car for a short period of time, but then they found it abandoned, no guy in it, guy had bailed, and it didn't take long for an officer to catch a glimpse of that guy running away. Well, a foot pursuit ensued, but the guy was quickly lost somewhere in this residential neighborhood. When something like that occurs, anyone who's available goes to the area to help. And if you can clear a non-priority call, you go as well. Well, I cleared the call I was on and started heading that way as soon as the initial vehicle pursuit kicked out. Chuck, the same Chuck from episode 16, was a canine handler at the time, and he was also en route, as this was exactly the type of call that can benefit from the use of a canine. It's what those units are developed for. Well, the most important thing to do on a call like this is to get the perimeter set up with not getting into a wreck on the way there a close second. Well, perimeter is where we coordinate all the cops on the call to take positions surrounding the general area where we last saw that person or vehicle or whatever you're looking for that's still mobile. For this case, it's a guy on foot, so it doesn't have to be square miles big, but we do need to anticipate where and how far he may get prior to us getting set up. There's a number of factors used to figure this out, but once you get some experience with it, you get to where you can get it taken care of pretty quickly. And if you happen to be not so good at it, a supervisor or another guy or guys like Chuck will jump in and work with dispatch and the other officers to get things set up. Well, this night it was Chuck who immediately started working to get that perimeter set up, and it was a good one. It was tight. So guys jump on these perimeter spots and they turn their overhead lights on their patrol car. And we do that because we want that suspect to stop and hide. We want him to see those lights and think, oh crap, they're all over the place. I got to get down somewhere. I got to wait this out. I got to hide, which increases the chances for the dog or, other searching officers that are looking for him to be able to find him. And back then, rifles in patrol were still pretty rare, but since I was on the SWAT team, the department allowed us to purchase your own AR-15 and carry it as part of your patrol duty. And it came in really handy for hot calls just like this, a robbery, ag assault, suspects with a weapon. And, I was always happy to go help with those calls whenever people gave me a yell if I could. Well, a rifle, or a long gun as we sometimes refer to it, provides a number of advantages when in the hands of a competent officer. It provides much more accurate fire over a greater distance versus a handgun. A rifle in the configuration used for most police departments allows for a higher rate of fire and a higher volume of fire if needed. Round for round, a rifle round is far more effective at stopping whatever that suspect is doing versus a handgun round. And last, they're intimidating as hell from the suspect's perspective, which hopefully increases the likelihood that he or she will just give up and do what they're told versus the otherwise. There's a saying that you carry a handgun because you can't carry a rifle all the time. Well, whenever a canine team goes to work to locate a suspect, we always marry them to a cover officer. And the cover officer's primary job is to do what they can to keep that canine handler and the canine safe. And I say do what they can because it's not perfect. Obviously, you can't keep them completely safe. And that canine handler still has to be prepared to react just in case. A lot of canine handlers get involved in lethal force and deadly force situations due to the calls that they handle. So it gives you an idea of how dangerous that job can be. The biggest thing that you have to remember was that your job as cover is to watch the area and listen to the handler, not to watch the dog, which could be difficult because it's pretty cool to watch a dog go to work and home in on a person. Well, those canine teams get to know who they want there for cover and who they'd probably rather leave behind and go it alone. Well, at that point in my career, Chuck and I knew each other pretty well, had a lot of trust, had worked some stuff together. So it just made sense to me to go with them. Plus, I had the rifle, so it was kind of a no-brainer. So I clear on dispatch, and I say, hey, I'll meet Chuck at that last known point that the suspect had been seen. We meet up, quick discussion. Again, we've done this before, so we don't need to talk about too much. And he lets that dog go to work. And pretty soon, it's getting something. It's doing something. It's smelling something. So the dog's working and pulling us down and around some alleyways. And Chuck is watching and working his dog, and I'm just doing my best to keep up and keep an eye all around for any threat that may jump out at us. Well, the dog pulls us down an alley and seems to have a good scent on this guy. And a canine guy or gal handler could explain it a lot better, but they call it bracketing, and it's where they triangulate the odor that they're getting to home in on the suspect, blah, blah, blah. With outdoor searches, you have to account for wind and natural air movement and things like that as part of your job of the handler, understanding and interpreting what that dog's doing, and to help us ultimately try to figure out where this suspect's at. So we cruise down this one alley, but the dog's wanting to double back around a couple of these big dumpsters that we had just passed, which again is just normal. Sometimes they go, back and forth and up and down until they really get it in there. I mean, odor floating around on the breeze is kind of a tough thing sometimes. So Chuck has given me indication that, hey, I think this guy's close. So I keep close watch, on the surroundings again. I'm using the flashlight on the rifle when I need to, but otherwise I'm just, keeping my mouth shut and keeping my ears and my eyes open. So the dog's indicating that there's something inside this one dumpster in the alley. And Chuck points to it and he mouths, hey, the guy's in there. These guys work with these dogs enough, they get a pretty good idea. And the way he was telling me that, I was like, okay, this guy's in there. There's not really much of a question. Well, sometimes if this happens, the handler will, open that lid enough to basically let the dog go in there and take care of business and see what's going on. Or if it's too high or if it's an odd angle, the handler sometimes will literally pick the dog up and put him in the room, the window, the dumpster. But I remember on this night, Chuck there was just something he wasn't feeling good about, and he communicated to me non-verbally that wasn't what he wanted to do. And I remember because I called Chuck and chatted with him on this to make sure I was remembering it right, and he said he remembers watching all of our breath, me, him, and the dog as we were communicating how we were going to deal with this issue, how we were going to throw the lid open, and then I would cover down on whatever we found inside the dumpster. So I get in a position to look over the edge of the dumpster to do my part, and I give Chuck a nod that I'm ready. I don't have to look at him. I just got to give him a nod because I'm looking down the barrel of this AR. Well, Chuck grabs hold of that lid and gives it a hard fling open. And then I'm up and over the edge with the barrel of that AR before the lid's even completely going over itself onto the backside of the dumpster. And I'm already on the light for the rifle so I can clearly see inside. And there's a guy in the dumpster. Well, this guy's laying on his back, and he's got this bayonet-style knife that is easily 12 to 14 inches long, clenched in his hand, and just kind of laying across his chest. Well, the dumpster's pretty full, so the guy's maybe just a couple feet down from the top of the lid, easily within lunge distance to me or any other poor cop that happened to open that lid. And, you know, there was no doubt in our minds later on, we talked about it, that guy would have lunged and stabbed any cop who opened the lid if that guy thought he could get away with it. Well, there's no getting away with it this time, though. So as soon as it registered that there's a body inside, holding that knife the way he was, I had that AR muzzle pointed at the middle of that guy's face from just a few feet away, and I stated the obvious. You move an inch, and you're dead. Wasn't really any need for volume because he was, like I said, 3 or 4 feet away from me. No need for cursing because I've discussed this before. It's just a bunch of wasted words. Calm, deliberate, and no question that I'd follow through if I needed. And lucky for him and us, he listened. I gave commands for him to slowly push that knife off to one slide, let it kind of fall down into the dumpster, and then we had him crawl out of it, and he was taken into custody with no problem. It's always a good feeling. It's always cool to be able to check in with dispatch on a search like that with, got one in custody and we're code 4. I always remember that search because I think that had we rushed things or we had put that dog in that dumpster, somebody or Chuck's dog would have gotten seriously hurt or killed. And the way the call was handled from start to finish by all the patrol folks and the canine guys and just everybody involved, it was just textbook. You know, and later in our careers, Chuck and I both used that call while we would do instruction for perimeters or searches or cover teams or whatever, because there's just so many good examples. When I was in special investigations for the first time as a SAU detective, there was a call that kicked out where patrol had gotten into a foot pursuit with a suspect, and he had fled from a stolen vehicle, if I remember right. And when you're available, when you work those special assignments, you always go help with stuff like that because, you know, we're in our unmarked cars and we got plain clothes. So a lot of times you're able to help find people easier than that poor guy wearing the uniform in a cop car. Sticks out a bit. And you know what? You should just help anyway if you can. Well, me and 1 or 2 of the other guys from my squad get over in that area. It was a really large mobile home park in our city, and we start doing what we can do to help out. We're cruising around for a while. We're not seeing anything. And eventually the patrol units all break down the perimeter and their search components and they clear the area. And as is sometimes the case, we always try to stay around hoping that that guy's going to see that happen and think, hey, I'm in the clear. And he can come out and, you know, think the coast is clear and take off. And then we grab him. Well, we work the area and we still got nothing. So before we leave and clear to go do something else, a couple of us decide to get out on foot in the last area that the patrol guys had seen this guy before he just disappeared on them. And I don't believe, for some reason, we didn't have a dog available either because a dog would have pretty much solved this problem much quicker than it was solved. But it's kind of funny. Sometimes they're around, sometimes they're not. They just have other obligations. So when they're not around, you just got to do the best you can. So anyway, we're walking in and out of these carports of these mobile homes, and we're looking in nooks and crannies and under cars and, you know, the obvious places. And we're starting to think about clearing this call and taking off ourselves. And I'm kind of looking in that last couple of carport areas that I wanted to before I'm willing to give up. Well, I'm standing in this carport next to a car, and I'm scanning high and low and all around. And I don't know what caught my eye, but something just wasn't right about this hedge that separated the carport from the patio for the mobile home. And I kind of try to get a better look without being too obvious. And sure enough, I can see there's like a shirt and a pair of shoes in there. And then as I kind of try to look better out of the side of my vision, I see that there's a guy crouching inside the hedge, and he had just completely burrowed himself inside of it so that like all the branches and the leaves of the hedge had kind of fallen back down around all over him, and they hit him really, really well in there. I mean, hit him well enough that cops had walked past him at least a couple of times during their search. And, you know, it's our guy based on the clothing and the fact that, hello, people don't normally secrete themselves inside a hedge for no reason. Well, at that point, I'm about 15 feet away from where this guy's hiding, so I don't really want to spook him into another foot pursuit. So I act like I hadn't seen him and kind of keep just shuffling around and slowly working my way closer to him. I even get on the police radio, my portable, and say, hey, I'm just about done. I'm just, I'm getting ready to head back to my car, or whatever I said. Well, I kind of mosey my way toward that part of the hedge where this guy's hiding, and I get to within probably about 4 feet. Well, now I'm able to see him better because I'm kind of above, and I can see that he's just crouched into a ball on his feet with his head down and his face facing right straight to the ground. And this guy is not moving at all. And I had to take a short pause to admire just what a great hiding spot it was. I mean, it had to be at least 2 cops, dang near myself, walked right past this guy within feet. But his luck ran out. So as I've mentioned, there's always that chance that the guy could be armed. So you got to be careful. Even though I really wanted to basically get close enough and then just jump down and shove this guy out of the shrub as hard as I could. So when I'm close, but far enough to kind of watch for any indication that he's going to try to hurt me or run or whatever, I say in a calm voice, I see you in the bush, and I want you to come out very slowly with no weapons or you're going to get yourself shot. And I was drawn down on the guy at the time because I'm pretty confident that there were weapons involved with the initial crime that this guy had committed, and we are aware of that. Well, good for both of us. I just hear this, okay. And he slowly starts crawling out of this bush. And I know he was tired of crouching in that bush, and I could tell that he was pretty cramped up. So he had to know that I'd have caught him pretty quick if he had tried to run again, even if he wanted to. And I think he was probably a little relieved to be caught so that he could get out of there and stretch out. Well, I took him into custody with no problem, got the cuffs on him. And again, it's a great feeling to be able to put out over the radio that, hey, I've got this guy and he's in cuffs and, send me a unit for transport. Well, with that, guys, I close this episode of I Barely Got Here. I thank you for listening. And if you like the show, please subscribe and post a review and ask your friends to give it a listen as well. If you have any questions or comments, you can shoot me an email at ibarelyGotHere@gmail.com, and you can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Sam42 is 10-7.